Yo, what's happening? I don't know whether they call it the social media world or podcast world or whatever it is. I want to welcome you to 13th Tribe Podcast, where we are spiritually in tune and socially engaged. Got my brother with me, Rifica, and 13th Amendment. As you know, we are, spoken word artists, hip hop artists. We love the game. What I'm saying, we like speaking to the people, and so we kind of put this whole thing together so that we can have a way to just dialogue with our folks and let people know what's on our minds concerning everyday issues, whether it be politics, hip hop, theology, all that stuff. We talk about it all. If it's affecting the urban community, we want to let you know what we think, because we are part of that community. And so welcome to the 13 Tribe Podcast. Rifica, man, introduce yourself. Want to hear from you.
Hey, what's up, y'all? First off, all glory go to God. None of me. This your boy Rifica. That's an acronym. It stands for Righteous in Faith, Increase Abundantly. And this is the 13 Tribe Podcast. You know what I'm saying? Very excited to be here on this platform. Like my brother 13th Amendment said, you know what I'm saying? We're gonna be discussing various topics that's going on right now today in our world. We're gonna try to stay on the cutting edge, all of that, and give y'all various different views with a biblical godly mindset. We're gonna try to speak what we feel God's heart is on various situations in our world today.
All right, cool, man. And you gotta talk to the people, man. That name Rifica, I would have never imagined hearing the name first. When I first heard that name, I was like, man, this Wu-Tang Clan missing member. Like, what I'm saying, you gotta fill us in, man. How did you come up with that name Rifica, man? That's pretty dope.
Man, well, as y'all know, some people may know of me from my Christian rap career. I started doing that when I was about 18, and first I was trying to do secular rap as a teenager, and when I started doing Christian rap, I tried to bring the name I was using in secular rap over to the Christian rap. And the guy that discovered me, Michael Jefferson from New Camp Entertainment, he called me up one day. I believe I was about 18 years old, you know what I'm saying, summertime. He called me up and he told me, man, I've been telling people about you, been telling people I'm working with you, but they not really feeling your name. And I was going at the time. I was actually going by Master Baller. You know what I'm saying? Because back then,
hold on. Time about Sadik. What's that name again?
Back then, I was trying to go by Master Baller.
Master Baller.
Yeah, because back then that was like the early millennium, and in the late '90s, like I guess when I was about 15, that's when I came up with that name. But I was still trying to do secular rap. Back then,
yeah.
No Limit was real big, you know what I'm saying? Cash Money was real big. So being a baller, that's what it was all about. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I was trying to use that. So, but I tried to take that in the Christian hip hop, and he called me up and let me know that was not gonna work. He called me up, he said, man, I'm telling you about you, but they excited about it, but you're gonna have to change your name. Then he got off the phone. But back then, you know what I'm saying, Mike D, you know what I'm saying, we might have him on as a guest one day or something like that. He thought he was P. Diddy, the Christian rap P. Diddy or something like that, like on Making the Band. So he was real hard on me when I was starting off and coming up, but I thank God for him, So I stopped, like when he hung the phone on me, I got off, I took a few steps forward, and then the Holy Spirit gave me the name Rifica. And a few seconds later, he gave me the meaning of it. I didn't have to sit up here, and do the Venn diagram or whatever they call it, where you try to figure out the name, the acronym for each letter and all that kind of stuff. I knew almost instantly a few seconds later that it would stand for Righteous in Faith, Increase Abundantly. And that's what I've been going with ever since. But actually back then it was the Rifica, and everything was had a period in between it. But then in 2009, I dropped it down to Rifica.
Nah, I mean, that's pretty dope. I'm laughing because I'm sitting here like, man, imagine, you being in church and they say you're coming to the stage, Master Baller. Like, what we about it? I had to laugh, man. I had to laugh. Well, you know how it is. I mean, we all go through those name changes and stuff, man. When I first started out doing spoken word and hip hop, man, I went under the acronym or the name Anonymous Composer. And then I just dropped that to anonymous. And then I went out to Houston. Funny thing was, I, saying, like, in the process, I was like, okay, this name right here is not necessarily suiting what I wanted to continue to do. And the reason why I came up with anonymous at first was because if you ever read like one of those poetry books or whatever, and sometimes you got like the artist, and nobody knows the artist that actually did the work. You know what I'm saying? And so it's always unknown writer or anonymous composer, or just someone who, and so I just wanted to, I wanted to have that name, so when anybody would be like, oh, who wrote this, and nobody could figure it out, it'd have been anonymous composer. And so I adopted that, and I embraced that, in the spoken word community and the hip hop community embraced that as well. But the interesting thing is, after a while, that got kind of old because I wanted something to have a much more deeper meaning. And so, I was sitting there thinking about it, and then it just hit me, man. 13th Amendment, you know what I'm saying? Is matching the code in the U.S. Constitution that in a sense abolished slavery. At the same time, there's a passage in the Bible that talks about who the Son sets free is free indeed. And so my whole motive was just trying to give freedom to the people through spoken word, through hip hop, just like whatever I do, I just wanted to make sure that people, was getting the message that there is freedom outside of the system. And so that was the whole approach. That was the whole goal. So, it's just interesting how, every artist that I've met come across, like the name that they started out with ain't the name that they ended up with, you know what I'm saying? And it's that process that I think that a lot of people would never really appreciate what it means, or like the whole, the whole concept of coming up with an alias, something that really makes you stand out from the crowd, something that has meaning, and something that when it's spoken and when it's heard, people like are expecting something big or major to happen, and people can't really appreciate that process if you haven't been in like entertainment or whatever. So yeah, man, that's why I had to ask you, man, how did you come up with that name, Rifica? Because I could see that, like Raekwon and Ghostface Killer, and then you got Rifica, like that match, like that's, so I just thought, like, man, this is a missing member of the Wu-Tang Clan, but I'm glad to have run into you, because it's like part of running into you, and I know I'm kind of rambling, but part of running into you is kind of what inspired this whole podcast thing, man, because being with somebody who had the same passion, had the same artistry, that, that keep me on top of my toes and makes me want to improve in my writing and my techniques and all that stuff. It was like, man, it'd be dope if we had a podcast to just kind of, accompany what we do as a team. And so, man, it's just good. A lot of people are glad to see us together, and expectations is doing bigger and better things, man. So, what I'm saying? Welcome to Atlanta. You know what I'm saying? I know you stayed out in Houston and like Las Vegas as well, man. You got to tell us about all that.
Man, I'm gonna get to that before I forget, I had a couple questions. Well, I had one question for you. One thing that stood out when you said the name change, and I never really thought about that before, and that's real intriguing about how 13th Amendment means those various things to you, man. I knew it was the amendment that freed the slaves and all that, but I didn't know about the other things you went into depth with us about. So thank you for that, because it was very deep. But I wanted to ask you, what I realized when you was talking was, you said how artists or people in entertainment, they never start off with the name or keep the name that they start off with. And I wanted to know, is that, and I realized that is true. I noticed it a lot with Christian artists. I was wondering, when you said that, were you talking about mainly people that are Christian artists, or people in secular and Christian at the same time?
Just all across the board, man. I mean, you could think about it, like, for instance, we talked about Kendrick Lamar. He started off with K Dot. You know what I'm saying? He went off with K Dot. If we talk about like in the Christian circle, I remember Cross Movement. You talked about he go by Ambassador, but he was also called Deuce. You know what I'm saying? Saying, like, go on and on, down the list of artists, man. And artists go through that challenge of like trying to pick a name that's gonna stick, that's gonna fit, that's saying, that speaks to the masses and also speaks to them. And that's just, you know, that's just how it is. Now, I'm not saying that every artist does that. You know what I'm saying? You got some artists who are blessed where they just come out with a name and that's just who they are, you know, from beginning to end, from cradle to the grave. But then you got those you got a majority of those artists, man. They was like, yeah, man, you know, when I started out, I used to go by this name, and then all of a sudden I just, you know, saying wasn't feeling no more. I switched up, you know, and that's what happened to me, man. You know, even also adopting along with 13th Amendment the moniker Yeshua Speaks, because I want people to know, like, listen, anytime you hear what I got to say, it's not just me speaking, but it's the God in me that's speaking. You know what I'm saying? It's the Messiah, the spirit of the Messiah speaking through me. And so it's Yeshua Speaks is another moniker that I go by. So, you know, so it's all that infused, you know. You know, I talk to the streets, I talk to the church, I talk to, you know, I talk to everybody, you know. It is what it is. Yeah.
I like that, bro. I really like that. You asked me about my background as far as Vegas and Houston and Atlanta. I'm like Houston, Atlanta, Vegas. You know what I'm saying? I need to make a song called Houston, Atlanta, Vegas. You know what I'm saying? Eventually, maybe that'll come on my last album I do one day to say live. Last one I do, you know what I'm saying? But unless we do, I know we gonna do some music and stuff too. So, but the last solo one gonna be the Say Lie album. I'm talking about that for a minute. But my background, man, I grew up, born and raised in Houston, Texas. You know what I'm saying? I was always interested in the arts. You know, growing up, I wanted to be an actor actually as a child. I think that was the first artistic thing I wanted to do. So my mom actually put me in the ensemble theater summer program where they would have youth and they would train them in music, in dance, in theater, in writing, and I think I'm forgetting one, but those are the main ones. And at the end of the summer, we would always put on a production, so we'd be auditioning for those productions throughout the summer. So I did it when I was 8, and I was just a bunny in Alice in Wonderland back then. You know, so I didn't have a major role like that when I was 8.
Yeah.
You know, and even before that, I remember my mom taking me to Campbell Soup's audition or some type of auditions when I was a kid. I didn't get to point. I was like 6 years old, so she always stood behind me with that. But then backtrack a little bit forward, when I was 12, I went back to the ensemble theater. For some reason, I wanted to go back again. I took a break. I think when I was 8, I took a break because I got in a lot of trouble. It was so bad till when we did the last show, the lady that was over the ensemble theater came and chased my mom down and told her how horrible I was to work with. And I know I was bad back then. I was a troubled child, you know what I'm saying? So, but that's why she did that. So I didn't go back for a few years, but when I was 12 and I went back, things went different, you know what I'm saying? All of the teachers loved me except for maybe one, because I didn't really want to do all that writing, which is odd. I'm a Christian rapper, write poetry and all that stuff now, but I didn't want to do the writing, but I love the singing, I love the dancing, I love the theater, everything. I loved all that. And those teachers of that stuff knew that.
Yeah.
I ended up auditioning for the program that they were having that summer. It's called The Initiation of Bobo Tyler. It was a play about a gangster who had to be initiated by killing a teacher. It was based in Chicago.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting the role of Bobo Tyler, playing that role. The teacher I had to kill was actually Solange Knowles.
Wow.
So when I auditioned, you know, I was like 12 and she was 10. And when we actually did the production, Beyonce was actually sitting. She wasn't Beyonce because they hadn't came out with the first Destiny Child album yet.
Right.
But they were there, like they were right there. I can look at the tape, you know what I'm saying, and see her like on the side where I was dancing in front of her, because they tried to keep the main characters hidden when we come out and dance before we actually came out in the production. But we did all the little dance. It was like you know, when you go see a musical, like one of those type of productions. So they have the dancing, they have the singing and all that kind of stuff. So everybody came out, did all the dances. And if you were a part of the main cast, then they tried to keep you hidden until you actually came out to do your part. So she was actually there. And when I came out to do my part, this don't have nothing connected to Beyonce, but when I came out rapping Gangsta's Paradise. Actually,
Okay.
that was the intro for my character coming from the
Yeah.
top of
Yeah.
the arena or whatever.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty cool experience. I ended up making the all-star cast because they would have about 3 different casts to make sure that they serviced all of the students that were a part of the program that summer so they could participate. So I ended up being part of the all-star cast. We did a few plays during the school year. I know we was at Barber Jordan. I forget the other place where we did a play at. And yeah, it was pretty cool. We ended up performing for the awards that the ensemble theater has. So that's where I got my start at, man. And but I always loved rapping. I had older stepbrother named John. I know I'm rambling too now, but you're asking about my story, so I'm gonna go ahead and tell it. I had an older stepbrother, backtrack a little bit, named John, who wrote secular raps or whatever, but he taught me how to write my first rap when I was 8, and it was a gangster rap because back when I was 8, it was 1993. So gangster rap was real big.
Yeah.
Snoop Dogg was probably my favorite rapper back then.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? This evolved through the years. I remember at one point in middle school, it was Mystical. You know, it's just been changed. And then there was Jay-Z in high school.
Yeah.
There's Andre 3000. I'm sure we'll get into that.
Yeah.
That later. And Bizzle, of course. Andre 3000 and Bizzle. Of course, I gotta say them. But anyway, he taught me how to write my first rap, and I like rapping. So I started writing raps a lot more when I was in high school and stuff. I would rap them for my classmates. But I went to the Storm Encounter, Spiritual Encounter at New Light Christian Center. I think it was maybe summer when I was about 17 or so, summer 2001 of them. And Minister Benja Burt, he was preaching on the music industry. He was talking about, he brought up he brought up Notorious Big and Tupac. And he was saying how Christian artists are the trees, while secular artists are the grass. They get cut down while the Christian artists growing last. And while he was saying all that, he was speaking. The Holy Spirit was really ministering to me about using my talents for him. So after that, I ended up throwing out all my secular CDs and all that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? It was a youth group over there. So I threw all that stuff out and I started using my talent for the Lord. And it was real bootleg the way I did it, man. I would make my own beats with a karaoke machine. First, I played the tuba in high school. I was in the band. So I would I had a drum machine. I laid a drum beat for like 4 minutes on the cassette tape. Then after that, I would lay the bass line over the drum beat for about 4 minutes. Then after that, I would lay the keys over that. Then after that, I would do my rap on it. You know what I'm saying? So, and I recorded that was gonna be my demo tape. So I didn't know what to do. So I started looking on the back of Christian rap CDs I had and contacting them. You know what I'm saying? All I would get most time was the answering machine. So I would play my bootleg demo tape
to the answer
demo tape on the answering machine, you know, and I did that several times. I also remember mailing the tape, and sometimes some of them came back because I didn't know nothing about the right postage. It was a trip because my parents were mail carriers, so I should have just asked them how to do it. But the stuff would come back a lot of times. The cassette tapes I put in like a regular envelope that you mail a letter. You know, that wasn't correct. I should have sent a media mail. Anyway, one day, like I was talking about Mike D earlier, one day I left it on the back on the CD, New Camp Entertainment.
Yeah.
And Mike D called me back maybe about a few minutes later and said, man, you know what? I hear you. I heard you, man. I think you got something. I'd like to work with you. And then a few days later, we actually met. Is you from Houston too? You lived in Houston too. We actually met in the Meyerland area over there at that IHOP off of 610.
Yeah.
Over there where K and G's is, and that's in that parking lot, K and G's, you know.
Yeah.
A little bit further, South Post Oak, where South Post Oak cross 610.
Yeah.
And we met over there.
Yeah.
And he's like a big brother to me now, but he really gave me my start, man. And I'll stop for a little bit and let you talk. I got to the first part of the story.
Oh man, I don't even know where to start, man. I just think, I mean, like kind of like when you talk about music, man, and just bringing it back to like '93. Wow, I think Snoop was coming out, Dr. Dre. I remember I used to memorize their lyrics like it was nothing. And at that time, which is kind of funny, because I never really, saw myself as like being a rapper or even spoken word or whatever. That wasn't what was getting me at that time. My thing was I was trying to get into the NBA. I was trying to be a basketball player. You
We
know, it
got that
wasn't.
in common too.
Yeah. That wasn't, I wasn't the most skilled at it, but for some reason, I just thought I was going to be in the NBA. But, but what I'm saying, like, but I remember listening to, and again, growing up in Atlanta, we had things like the Atlanta Fresh Party, which is like what was on V103. So a lot of people who grew up in Atlanta at that time, you kind of know what I'm talking about. You had Atlanta Fresh Party where it was on V103 around 10 o'clock, especially like on Saturday nights or whatever. And we would play all the songs from Two Live Crew, Luke, to Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, all what I'm saying, all these songs would be playing at a certain time. And I mean, it to me, it was like it was kind of speaking to me, it was kind of getting to me in a sense, but it was like, man, I'm really liking a lot of what I was hearing, the lyricism, and even growing up in the South, it really wasn't too much about the lyrics as it was about the production, about the beat. You know what I'm saying? Like you can give me a tape or whatever, or give me a CD, but if the beat wasn't hitting, you know what I'm saying, I'd immediately turn it down. I didn't care what the lyrics were, because I remember, man, like some people would talk about artists, especially some artists from up north. And I'm like, yeah, they stuff is nice, but if they're, but the thing about a lot of the production from up north, it just didn't have that same type of flavor as it did from the South. And so a lot of the Southern hip hop is what I gravitated to, not necessarily songs, not necessarily hip hop artists from the North. And then of course West Coast hip hop, it was easy to gravitate to because they focused a lot on production as well. It's kind of reason why, when you think about like a Dr. Dre and a Chronic, what made it stand out so much is that it was all about the productions and not as much about the lyrics or trying to be lyrical or lyricism, but they, it was a production and they told stories, and I love hearing stories. So for me, man, it was just kind of just a natural thing for me to just gravitate to hip hop music, man. I loved it all. I mean, any artist that had something to say, that had a great production behind them, I was into them. And later on, what ended up happening is that I started paying attention to the words a lot more. Like I would literally listen to like literally focus a lot on the lyrics at this particular point. And this is like post Master P, because I remember like, your No Limit. And the funny thing is, when I was in 10th grade, it was like I was probably one of the first kids that was listening to No Limit, Like I remember being on the school bus listening to Mr. Ice Cream Man, and people was like, yo, why are you listening to that trash? You know what I'm saying? And it was, but not too long after that, now Master P became a household name.
Right.
As far as like a lot of those artists or whatever that came out of No Limit. But I was into the lyrics, man. One of the artists that I would say that I loved the most was Tupac. Like Tupac to me was like the epitome of what I wanted in an artist. You know what I'm saying? Somebody who was poetic, someone who knew how to hit you the emotion, hit you where it counted emotionally, who understood life and knew how to articulate it. And to me, that's why Tupac had always been like my number one artist when it came to rap. Even though some people say he ain't necessarily the most he's not a lyricist, but to me he was a lyricist. He just conveyed it in a certain way that I understood it and I can appreciate. So Tupac in a sense became like the soundtrack to my life. A lot of his music became the soundtrack to my life. But then slowly after his death was when I started getting into understanding Christianity a little bit more, what I'm saying, and it's where Christ spoke to me was during the time that he died, because Pac died September 1996. I became a Christian September 1996. And that was like a very pivotal a very pivotal time for me. What was also interesting about that time is that when I transitioned or converted to be, to join the Messianic movement or to be a Christian, it was also the same time that I started paying a lot of attention to the words that would be on a lot of these art, that a lot of these artists would spit. And so when I started paying more attention to the word, then I started naturally, saying having a passion for poetry, because I was like, man, if for some reason when I'm listening to these artists now, it's like, you take away the beat and you listen to the lyrics and you still gravitated by what they were saying. To me, that captured my heart. That's when I was like, yo, I wanted to get into poetry. I wanted to get into spoken word. I wanted to emphasize on just knowing, learning the words a lot more and learning how to use words a lot more. Not as much as the beat, even though I was still a big, even though I'm still big on the beat and I'm still big on production, you're going to get my attention when I hear a nice beat. But then the second thing I'm paying attention to is on words. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of what started it for me. And I mean, I would hit stages. I mean, I would do stuff in high school. I would hit stages wherever I could go. And I remember in a writing class in college where the teacher was, told us to write, saying to write a song, not write a song, but to take a song lyric, one of our favorite songs or whatever, and write the lyrics out and recite the lyrics in class, because he was going to help us do a breakdown of the lyrics. Now this is mind blowing for me in college. So of course I'm sitting here thinking like, man, what song or what lyrics would get my attention the most, or that I think spoke to me the most, or just hit me in a certain way the most. I picked out Mia X, and she was part of No Limit. But I picked out Mia X Hoodlum Poetry. And and that particular song, she talked about the relationship between cocaine and crack and its influence on the South. And I spit that in class. I don't think a lot of people may have heard that, but it was almost like you could see people just like quiet, like
Mm-hmm.
that's how deep it was. And so for me, it was like all of a sudden it became poetry became the thing. Like, yeah, I want to rap. I love rapping. I'll rap any day, but I got to make sure that what I rap about has to come off with poetry, good, solid poetry. And so now, man, when I even listen to a lot of artists, the first thing I'm listening to is, kind of what gravitates me to an artist is, what is their poetry like, because
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of people are rapping. There's not a lot of There's not a lot of rappers that are poets. Poets at heart. Which is why, and when I look at my top fives, or if anybody asks me who is your top five, just like what you said, man, Andre 3000, he's up there because every time Andre spit, it's pure poetry. Every time you listen to like a Jay-Z, pure poetry, Kendrick Lamar, pure poetry. Like that's what gravitates me to hip hop now. When I listen to hip hop now, it's about that poetry. I want to hear that poetry. If you're a rapper, nice, but I want to know if you, to me, you're a true rapper if you can come off with some poetry. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
to me, because that's the essentials of rap, is that poetry. I want to hear that poetry. So yeah, man. And so that's kind of what pulled me into that spoken word arena. Um, Love Jones, the movie, that was a big influence. And not just Love Jones, and even before Def Poetry Jam came out, what I'm saying, just the fact that there was a lot of people who was doing it in Atlanta. So by the time Def Poetry Jam came out, we was hooked. We was
Mm-hmm.
ready to run, you know. So I mean, I can go on and on. Goody Mob, Outkast, um, just a lot of artists who, when you listen to what they're saying, it was like a soundtrack to my life. Especially because they came from, especially like Goody Mob and Outkast, that came from Atlanta. That was like the sound. Like every time they would spit, I knew exactly what they was talking about because I lived it. I lived, what I'm saying, you know,
Mm-hmm.
so I can imagine what New Yorkers sound like every time somebody like a Biggie or a Jay-Z would drop a rhyme, and it's like, yo, I'm here, like I'm in the epicenter. I see what's going on, and this right here is a soundtrack to my life. So that's kind of what pulled me into this whole game. But yeah. Now I'm rambling, but I probably went on for a good 10 minutes. But that just I love hip hop, man. I love hip hop to the core. Yes, sir. Yes,
Oh
sir.
yeah. It's all good, man, because I definitely enjoyed hearing your story. I know the people definitely did too. But what you say about poetry, if I think back, I was probably actually into writing poems. Not I wasn't deep or learning the foundation, the fundamentals of it and all that, but I was writing poetry coming up. I would write a lot of love poetry though, trying
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
trying
Yeah.
to
Trying to hit
show
that game.
yeah, with different young ladies as I was coming up in school and stuff, middle school, high school, all that. So that was kind of my foundation for writing poetry. But at the
Yeah.
same time, still writing raps. I
Yeah.
think it evolved into writing actual poetry. I actually got connected with some people you were connected with. I believe when you lived in Houston with Baritone and
Yeah. Yeah.
Choice the Poet. I think they
Good
called it
brothers.
or something like that. But I
Yeah.
remember I went to they used to have it at TSU at the TSU chapel or something like that. They have a lot of their
Mm-hmm.
events. And I
Yeah.
forgot how I found out about it. I think I might have saw it online or something. Like I decided I was gonna start doing open mics to get more exposure at this time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it was around the Fresh Manna album or time period or whatever. I kind of divide my life into those different time periods of those titles of those albums or whatever, or what we're currently doing. So I would say that right now we're in the 13th tribe era.
Yeah.
That's what I call it, era.
Yeah.
I was in
Yeah.
the Fresh Mountain era back then, and I had came out with my song Addiction, so I wanted to do that to get more exposure for the album at the open mic. So I
Yeah.
went to the open mic and I did Addiction. Baritone, of course, he was over it. And when I did Addiction, Baritone really enjoyed it. And then we
Yeah.
got connected. And it actually got to the point where, I love, but being around those poets, you know what I'm saying? I wanted to write some poetry too. And I would do my raps and stuff. And he actually let me headline one of the events one time. I think that might actually been, could have, I'm not sure or not. It might have been one of the first events or concerts or whatever that I headlined. I know I did some Vacation Bible School stuff where I headlined or whatever, but that really meant a lot to me. You know what I'm saying? It
Yeah.
was like the first one where people bought tickets and all that kind of stuff. And I was doing
Yeah.
very from the Fresh Manna album.
Yeah.
But when I was inspired by them, I wanted to write poetry.
Yeah.
So I wrote this poem called Father's Day.
Mm.
And not to give away too much, but we working on something for Father's Day right now that we're evolving, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
For Father's Day. But that's when that started. And I didn't perform it anywhere or anything like that. But I did put it on YouTube and I put it on social media. I paid for the ads on Facebook to have it on the video on there and all that kind of stuff. And I think at that time too, Periscope was real big also. So I was
Mm.
doing Periscopes regularly, and there was this poet on there called Poet Lena. And on one
Mm.
day of the week, she would have a dark scope or something like that where
Okay.
poets would come on to her
Yeah.
Periscope and do
Yeah.
poetry. A lot of times I would just spit my deepest songs where I felt I was the most lyrical. That's what I would bring to the table on those dark scopes or whatever. But I think I may have done. I would spit them a cappella, of course. I may have did Father's Day on that as well. But around that time period, I would say the 2015, 2017 was when I really found a love for spoken word and
Mm.
for poetry. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And as I get older, I
Yeah.
was doing rap since I was 18. I'm currently 38. And as I got older and as I am getting older, I was thinking, man, I was like, I don't want to be one of these. Nothing wrong with it, you know what I'm saying? If you still doing it and people still calling you and you getting shows and stuff like that when you're in your 40s, being a 40. But I said I didn't want to be like one of these cats still trying to make it as
Mm.
a 40-year-old rapper. Now, if you're
Mm.
already established and stuff, that's different.
Yeah.
And you're still doing shows and getting called, but like trying to get out there, that kind of stuff for you. That never set right with me. So I was just wondering, what was gonna be the next step for me? And then me and you met, you know what I'm saying? You were
Yeah.
doing spoken word and I was more so loud, I wanted to do music. But I was noticing when COVID hit, I had like this conference I was supposed to do in Houston. I was still living in Vegas at the time. That got shut down. And then around the time of my wedding was when the next show was supposed to be, but I couldn't do it because we were gonna be on our honeymoon. It was actually a church in Georgia wanted me to come out and do the gospel wobble, do that particular song, but that ended up I wasn't able to do that, and shows haven't really been coming in. But then me and you met, and I listened to some of your poetry, and then I was like, you know what I'm saying, it's placed on my heart that we should start doing poetry. And you remember I hit you up, you know
Yeah.
what I'm saying, and it was like, man, we should do a poem together. And I
Yeah.
just think it's gonna be a one-time thing, but ended up we did one for I didn't know you actually had a poetry ministry at the church. Well, I guess I kind of did, but I didn't know the depths of it, that you had been
Yeah.
doing it like that by yourself and stuff for so long. But then we decided to do a poem together, and it went off well at the church. And then we started the poetry ministry at the church, and we've been doing one for the major holidays ever since. And I thank God for that, because it gives me a way to continue to use the gift that he
Mm-hmm.
gave me, put in my heart since I was 8 years old, you know
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying, for him. And I've been watching Def Poetry Jam. I don't know why I wasn't watching when I was a kid. I was just in the rap. I guess it came out when I was in high school and I wasn't watching it. But I've ordered all of the DVDs, and I've been going back and watching. I'm on season 2 now. And
Yeah.
I'm really loving it. I'm really studying the artistry. There are some poets on there from Atlanta. There was one lady, I don't remember her name, but
Mm-hmm.
she was on there a couple times, I've noticed. Um,
Probably Georgia Me, if I'm
yeah,
not
yeah,
mistaken.
that's what it
Yeah,
is.
Georgia Me is that's an incredible sister, man. I had a chance to perform on the stage with her a couple of times, man, and she's an incredible sister. I mean, yeah, I mean, the what makes Atlanta really stand out is that, our spoken word community, with all its ups and downs, all its challenges, is probably as just any other spoken word community. What makes Atlanta spoken word community is that we're just kind of like connected in a way. You know what I'm saying? You hit like certain stages, and you're going to just about meet almost every poet that Atlanta has to offer, because we travel almost like we travel in packs in a way. And it's a beautiful thing, man. So it's interesting that, you brought up, saying Georgia Me, because she is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, spoken word artist in Atlanta. I mean, it's just this well accomplished. There is also like Teresa Songbird, who, man, she went and she did something for, I think, for the Essence, or I think it was for Essence, man, and she just totally blew the crowd away. But these were artists that I remember we would go places like Urban Grind and go to Apache Cafe, or go to Mocha Match, or go to just or go to Java Monkey, just all these different spots where they did poetry. And man, I've seen them grind. You know what I'm saying? I've seen them grind it out, and they inspired me. So when I start seeing like Georgia Me hit television, or Teresa Songbird just blow the stage away, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, these were artists who we were in the room together, you know what I'm saying? And to see them
Yeah,
blow up is just incredible. And that's just how the Atlanta spoken word scene is. You know what I'm saying? Some of the other artists that inspired me, Abyss, you know what I'm saying? Hopefully, as we get out there, so you'll run into him. But Abyss is like an elder brother to me. Tommy Bottoms, he was also on Def Poetry Jam as well. Like, these were, these were just incredible artists who, I mean, when you talk about grinding for Atlanta, representing Atlanta, these guys were on a whole nother level, and they challenged me to be a better writer, you know what I'm saying, to be a better spoken word artist. Because imagine coming on stage after an Abyss, or coming on stage after a Tommy Bottoms or a Georgia Me, you know what I'm saying, and you got to rock it just as hard as they rocked it, you know what I'm saying? Like Queen Sheba, you know what I'm saying? Like, these are some of the most amazing talents here in Atlanta, and you can't come half stepping, you know what I'm saying? Because when they finish with the stage, they don't lit that thing on fire. You know what I'm saying? And so the expectation is, you walking up after them, you better come with it, And so that's what that poetry scene is like for a lot of us, man. Hank Stewart, I don't know if you I don't know if you heard his name, but he's like the Georgia laureate for poetry. He is also an elder brother to me as well, and it's really helped me a lot, introduced me to a lot of circles. You know what I'm saying? A lot of some of my major performances came through being connected to him. You know what I'm saying? So I would say, man, you in the right spot, especially if you're trying to do it with poetry, you in a lovely spot, because Atlanta is music, it's soul, it's poetry, it's all that infused, and we get it in. So you came to the right place, man. But I didn't mean to cut you off. It's just that when you mentioned, that Def Poetry Jam, I had to, saying kind of shed a little light, saying. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, definitely, man. Nah, you good because you know some of these people that were on there, man. What I would like to know though, what I'm curious about, because it happened and I wasn't really paying attention when it happened. Now I'm kind of catching back up with the way it was done. But how do you think Russell Simmons found the poets, or what do you think the audition process was like? Maybe because you might have been more in tune to it when he was trying to find people to be on Def Poetry.
Yeah, I mean, Russell Simmons is a very interesting person. So I think that what happened is that a lot of the artists that were in the spoken word community at that time, before it was like Apache, it was there was a name for us, Yin Yang. It was Yin Yang. You know what I'm saying? I think Yin Yang Cafe or something like that. And if I can remember, it's been such a minute, but a lot of the artists from India, Ari, a lot of them, saying, went to Yin Yang and performed. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you know Apache Cafe, you can't know much about Apache Cafe without talking about Yin Yang. You know what I'm saying? Because this was a spot for a lot of, if not every artist, had to touch Apache Cafe. I'm talking about as even your groups like Floetry, they had to touch Apache Cafe. Apache was the place. So, so from what I understand is that a lot of those artists, when, it's like you get word that, what's the name? Russell Simmons is doing auditions. He's looking for some artists or whatever. And so you just have to, you kind of have to be in the know. At that time I was in college. I wasn't too much focused on, doing poetry professionally. But for those that were in the know, I mean, sending audition tapes, traveling to some of the places where they were doing tryouts and stuff like that, being connected, in the industry or whatever. And I mean, that's just how it go. That's just how it happened. And I mean, you're talking about something that went on, I think about, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around 5 seasons plus, saying 4 or 5 seasons. This, you said what?
It went 6 seasons. I got
Six
all.
seasons, yeah. So, you know what I'm saying? This is something that was like, it was catching fire, you know what I'm saying? That even some of your big names in the industry. I mean, first and foremost, you're talking about Russell Simmons, you know what I'm saying? A guy who helped take Def Jam to a whole nother level, you know what I'm saying? So anybody that's trying to do something professionally at that time, especially when you're talking about poetry, something that is not necessarily known in the mainstream, so to speak, if Russell Simmons puts a stamp on it, you out of here. You know what I'm saying? You ready to go. You know what I'm saying? So just just trying to catch that audition with him. I mean, come on. I mean, Kanye West, you know what I'm saying? His career partly took off because of their poetry jam. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just
Go ahead. Elaborate on that. I don't know this story. Elaborate on that a little bit.
No, I mean, when he was trying to build his fan base, you know what I'm saying, and trying to plug his name out there, and this is before College Dropout hit, you know what I'm saying? Kanye West would actually go, or actually went to a Def Poetry Jam to perform. You know what I'm saying? He had connections with Most Def. He went on Def Poetry Jam to perform, and all of a sudden people started paying attention to Kanye West. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not saying that not to take away from some of the stuff he did while he was in Chicago, but that Def Poetry Jam helped him get to an audience that was like, yo, this guy has something to say. because again, poetry is about what you say. It's not about a beat. You know what I'm saying? It's not about, like, if you got something to say, poetry is the avenue to say it. And so Def Poetry Jam is about your thinkers. It's about about your lyricists, those who all they do is focus on, speaking from the heart. So of course Kanye West comes in there and he, he drops, I can't remember what it was. I think it was off of the All Falls Down, um, where he did a piece from All Falls Down, with Selena Johnson, I believe that's her name, and he did that little piece. I think it maybe spit about two stanzas, and yo, it sold. You know what I'm saying? Like, it literally sold people on Kanye West. Like, yo, here's an artist who has, who is not just rapping, he's actually saying something. And he left, I mean, it's undeniable when he left that stage. So, I mean, I say all that to say that, uh, Def Poetry Jam was definitely like the tool to get to the next level. When you talk about uh, productions that came afterwards, like Verses and Flow, and some other productions, I can't name them off the top of my head. You know what I'm saying? All this was because of what Def Poetry Jam, that blueprint that Def Poetry Jam had laid. You know what I'm saying? And again, I mean, highlighting spoken word spoken word artists. And the one thing that also that Def Poetry Jam did was it also included mainstream artists. So you have your DMX, you have your Most Def, you have your Common, and just different artists that would just come through and they would spit from the heart, and they were mainstream artists. So just the amount of respect that they would get, because they would get on the stage and they wouldn't just rap a song, they would actually spit the song, a cappella. You know what I'm saying? And when you listen, you're like, oh, that song was poetry. I didn't see that song like that before. That song is poetry. So yeah. So yeah. So
So
yeah.
that's pretty cool, because I used to when I would do those dark scopes and all that, or when I would do baritone and all those open mics and stuff, and I would spit my
Yeah.
acapella, I would feel like I wasn't bringing what the poets were bringing, but that perspective, that really blesses me to look at it that way, that those artists were doing that.
Yeah.
So it wasn't any different, because the basis, like you say, the basis of any song, whether rap or singing, is poetry. It is
Yeah.
poetic. That's the foundation. That's the fundamentals of it. And
Absolutely.
you mentioned this is something I want to ask you, because you mentioned it a while ago. What college did you attend?
I did my undergrad at Georgia State University.
Okay.
Actually, when I first started, I went to Georgia Perimeter College. It was called Georgia Perimeter at the time. Some people that were like older than me would have known it as DeKalb College, but it was, by the time I got there, it was Georgia Perimeter College, and I went to the Clarkson campus. I may have done a stint. I did a semester at the Decatur campus, and I did a semester at the there was another campus, I think around the Dorville area, if I'm not mistaken, and I did a semester there. But I spent most of my time was at the Clarkston campus, which was off of Memorial Drive, in North Indian Creek, like right within that gap. And yeah, I'm grinding it out, and then I transferred over to Georgia State to finish out my 4 years. And so yeah, that's where I was. I was a graduate of Georgia State University, 2003. Go Panthers!
Yeah.
You
So
know,
you was in the mix of everything, because Georgia State is downtown, isn't it?
yes sir, yes sir. It
All
was
that
a mix of,
culture.
it was in a mix of everything. And what was kind of interesting is that I think one of the first times that I actually had a chance to meet like Jermaine Dupri and DeBrat in person was right at Georgia State. You know what I'm saying? Because they went to, I think they call it Walters. I think that was the name of it, was Walters, like a clothing shop. And that's where like a lot of people in Atlanta would go get their clothing, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, it's an urban store, whatever. You know what I'm saying? And I went in there, wasn't expecting nothing. And there it was, Jermaine Dupri and the Brat, you know what I'm saying? This wasn't a concert. This was everyday, people just hanging out, and so that was my first time running into them and having that opportunity to chat. That's just how Atlanta was, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I remember a time when Pastor Troy, with saying he was walking by himself, which was the funniest thing, you know what I'm saying? But him actually being on campus unbothered, you know what I'm saying? uh Going back to Goody Mob, Cujo, you know what I'm saying, being in the neighborhood playing basketball with CeeLo, you know what I'm saying? Like, these are some people who are just amazing, who would just show up just in and everywhere, because that's just, you know what I'm saying? Like, they weren't like, they were celebrities, but they weren't acting Hollywood. Everybody was like, yo, Atlanta is home. You know what I'm saying? One thing about Atlanta is home for a lot of people. So people come through and it's like, yeah, so and so is here, so and so is there. And, if you out of town, yeah, you want to go rush them and shake their hands. But for a lot of us, it was like, yo, this is the home team. They represent for us. We giving y'all them. We giving the world them. You know what I'm saying? But they representing for us. So yeah, just that. Yeah, that's that Georgia State experience. Ludacris. Funny thing is, Ludacris just got his honorary degree from Georgia State. Ludacris went to Georgia State not too long before I got there. And the same music management class that he took, you know what I'm saying, where he started learning a lot about the music industry, I also took that class, you know what I'm saying? Same teacher, everything. So, yeah, man, that's Atlanta for you.
That's wild, man. Coming up, I was really inspired by Atlanta's music. You know what I'm saying? Of course,
Yeah.
Goody Mob, of course, CeeLo, and I really got into Outkast in high school. Of course, Ludacris.
Yeah.
And all them cats, because that Atlanta sound, I can't. It was unmatched.
Yeah.
When Atlanta came out, when you heard the Atlanta song, you know what I'm saying? I was inspired by a lot of that music. And it's funny that you bring that up, because being from Houston, being from the H, you kind of see people coming up. I would see people, I just from time to time see people like that as well, like Bun B. I run across you Bun B from time to time, like just walking through. He's one that's not Hollywood at all. You know what I'm saying? He did a lot with Outkast back in the day with UGK. You know what I'm saying? You see them walking around. He'll just grip you up. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't, you was partner from down. Y'all grew up together or something. Lil Kiki too. You know what I'm saying? You just see him. He stayed off Herschelwood. Grew a few streets from where my mom stayed. I remember me and my cousin was in Turkey Leg Hood one day, and he was up in there, I think he was up in there, you know what I'm saying, eating and stuff like that with his wife and all that. And then we just let him sit there, like you say, unbothered. You know what I'm saying? We don't bother him or run up to him or anything like that. I remember I went to Prairie View A&M University. Slim Thug came through there a few times, in the band hall and all that kind of stuff, in Homeboy Taylor and all that. Also, man, I don't know why I can't remember this dude's name right now. The one with the grills.
Hold on.
Grills.
Not Paul Wall.
Paul Wall, yeah, Paul Wall. You see him, you know what I'm saying? That's just how it is, when you're in these cities. I feel like the culture, and this is why I tell people when they ask me how I like Atlanta. I say the culture of Houston and Atlanta is very, very similar. You lived in both places too, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I'm loving Atlanta because it reminds me of home without being home. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I was in 33 years. I tried Vegas out, you know what I'm saying, made some good connections there or whatever, but I felt like it was time to move somewhere else, because I met, you know what I'm saying, I met my wife, you know what I'm saying, and she was a flight attendant, and we needed to be closer together when we were dating and stuff like that. So I moved out to Atlanta. Plus, I'm an actor. you know, as
Yeah.
well. And Atlanta's Black Hollywood, you
Yeah.
know. So
Yeah.
that's another reason why I moved out here. It's just rich with culture and the arts and music, and I'm loving it out here. I'm loving the fact that I got to connect with you as well, man. I guess it kind of transitioned a little bit. You had asked me to listen to the Kendrick Lamar album.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? The new Kendrick Lamar album. And a lot of times I don't listen to secular rap a lot. A lot of times when I listen to secular rap, it's for research purposes. Like
Mm.
I'm listening to it to if I'm working on a mixtape and I'm gonna be using various tracks, you know
Mm.
what I'm saying, and changing them up a little bit, you know what I'm saying, to use them for Lord, like did with Gospel Wild but Deathman mixtape, volume 1, volume 2, and the Musicianary mixtape. Listening to it because a brother like you may have asked me to listen to it. And I mean it was very Kendrick Lamar is a beast, you know what I'm saying?
Mm.
I've recognized his talent from jump. And really, to me, the two cats, modern cats, that's at the top of the game in secular rap right now, to me, would have to be J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar. But I just kind of wanted to get your perspective on secular rap and secular music and listening to it. Because when you told me you listen to secular rap the very first time, I was kind of caught off guard and surprised, you know what I'm saying? Because I know I only listen to it for research purposes, or or if it doesn't have things that's objectifying women, all the vulgarities and stuff, I listen to that, you know what I'm saying, on a regular basis, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like there's anything wrong with that at all. But can you kind of explain your perspective on it?
Yeah, man. So for me, I think a lot of it is, you know, first I will always like to say that I'm the kind of person that I don't see the walls, so to speak. When people talk about like secular and like Christian, like, you know, as far as like when we say Christian rap, we're talking specifically about rap music that is geared towards evangelizing the gospel, right? And then we talk about secular as, you know, secular in a sense is just non-religious. It's there's not a not a way to like, there's not a specificness to it, right? It's just it's like non-religious. It's just not like God theocentric, you know what I'm saying? It's not God centered. So when I talk about listening to music, I learned a lot as a writer. You know, getting into poetry, I learned a lot writing poetry about myself and how I understood like life, the world, all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? Even when we talk about God, you know. So for me, there wasn't really like I didn't I learned to to get out of the notion of compartmentalizing the music. um, Now I will say this: I don't listen to every artist, you know what I'm saying? And I don't listen to every type of, you know what I'm saying, like every type of message that is out there. There's just certain artists or certain messagings that I just don't, it's just not my thing, you know what I'm saying? Um, what I do tend to listen to is not necessarily like whether it's sacred or secular, or whether it's Christian or unchristian. That's not what I'm gauging. A lot of time what I'm gauging when I listen to the music is the story behind the music. I like to do a lot of exegesis. So when I listen to an album, I go through it, and some of the things that I'm picking out is, if it's a great album, this album should tell me the history about the person, where that person is from, the lingos that that person is using, what time frame is this particular person catering to. Like for instance, one of Biggie's rhymes, right? Biggie says, "I'm seeing body after body, and my mayor Giuliani ain't trying to see a black man turn to John Gotti." That may sound very simplistic for some people. There's a whole lot of history just in what he just said, you know, because you think about it, when was Giuliani the mayor of New York? You know what I'm saying? That was during the time that Biggie came up, you know. What did he mean about not trying to see a black man turn to John Gotti? What was also interesting is that Giuliani was a major figure as far as in the legal world that put away a lot of mafia heads. You know
Mm.
what I'm saying? So, you know what I'm saying, at the same time, Giuliani was cracking down. He did a lot with cracking down on crime in New York. So when Biggie quotes this rhyme, when he says this rhyme, it's secular if you want to look at it like that, but you're also seeing education. You're also seeing history as griots, because that's really what poetry is. If you want to talk about like going back in the days when you look at the African culture, you're talking about griots. You know what I'm saying? People who took a look, who understood life and told stories, told, you know, oral history of their culture. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I see when I listen to, you know, artists like Biggie or Kendrick or whatever. I'm seeing griots, not necessarily because they just rapping, but because they're actual poets at heart. And so as a poet, I'm always listening to other poets. Some stuff I can dig, some stuff I can't dig, because it starts to then conflict with my, you know, where I stand as far as my faith is concerned. So I when I say I listen to when I listen to hip hop, I don't necessarily say I listen to secular or non secular. I just listen to music. Some artists I can dig, some artists I can't dig, especially if it's conflicting with what I believe. However, there's a core essential aspect of every artist that I can appreciate, and that is being able to tell a story, being able to speak to an audience that is relevant to the culture that we're in and what they're trying to aspire to, or where they've been, you know, what they've been through in life, and that's what I tend to look for. So, you know, again, I don't necessarily listen to every artist for pure entertainment. You know what I'm saying? If it's something that I want my spirit to digest, I'm very picky. You know what I'm saying? If it's something in which I'm just listening, you know, like you said, to do some research, to get an awareness about whatever, you know, whatever it is that's going on, then I'm a little bit more open to who I listen to. Funny thing about it, you know, I'm getting up in age. I don't spend a lot of time listening to music like that. You know what I'm saying? Which is weird. I mean, I read a lot of books at this point. You know what I'm saying? And because I also write my own stuff, I'm also not as not as in tune, so to speak, with a lot of what's going on in music. A lot of the artists that are in the industry now, I can't name them. I don't know the songs they do. I don't know the albums that they put out. You know, the artists that I'm very aware of are more so 2000, early 2000 to, you know, and older. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of the new stuff, I'm not really up on game a lot. And because I do a lot of my own writing, I don't want to have heard something and thinking that it's coming from me and it came from somebody else. You know what I'm saying? So I also, you know, make sure that when I'm writing, I'm also being unique in my process. So yeah. So yeah, that's kind of my spiel. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's just kind of where I'm at. Yeah.
No, it makes sense. It wasn't what I thought. You know, I didn't have no idea where I thought you were
Yeah, I'm
what
an
you were
interesting
gonna go
person,
with.
man. I mean, I used to say I used to be like so anti, like I ain't listening to no secular music. After a while, man, just growing up and just experiencing a lot more, I was like, some of this is not making sense, you know? Like, who said we can't listen to what we want to listen to? You know what I'm saying? Now, I get it, you know what I'm saying, because to a certain extent, you know, you don't want to be repping for the wrong team. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to be pulling out, you know what I'm saying? You don't want to be so hardcore. I want to say Wu-Tang Clan or Cash Money, or you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't want to rep them so hard to the fact that people can't tell, people can't make a distinction between what you represent and what they represent. You know, I'm in total agreement that as believers we shouldn't do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a distinction between what we say, what we believe, and what we convey versus what they, you know, people that are I would probably say the unbelievers and the non-converted would, saying convey and spit and all that stuff. So you got to make sure that you have your distinctions, saying. I think that from a music standpoint, is just depending on what it is. I may from time to time listen to a Kendrick Lamar, or I may flip it and listen to a propaganda. It just depends on where my headspace is at. A lot of times if I'm trying to study an artist, oh yeah, I'm pulling out their stuff. Sometimes it's not even listening to the album, it's going to like genius.com and pulling their lyrics. I want to see their cadence, how they write, their writing techniques and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I remember doing that because when I would do my mixtapes or whatever, I wanted to figure out how certain artists were doing what they was doing. In particular, Eminem, actually, he's in my top 5 now. I'm not gonna I know a lot of people may see that kind of weird, but like when you look at lyricism and the way he uses his words, alliteration, similar. I feel personally, I feel like he's unmatched. Although Andre 3000, I do put him above him, but I do feel like Eminem is in the top 5 personally. You know what I'm saying? Really top 2.
yeah.
I mean, I hate to say it, but he is. Although I don't like his content that he raps about, but I have to respect his cadence. I have to respect the way that the artistry, the gift that he has. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because God did give us all a gift. It's just how we choose to use it. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Other top 5, I don't know, man. I would say I just want to say mine since you may have said yours. I would have to put it Andre 3000, Eminem, Bizzle. You know what I'm saying? Fanatic. You know what I'm saying? He's in my top 5 as well. And
Interesting.
I'm gonna go with I have to go with Pac. I have to go with Pac as well.
Yeah.
In no particular order, you know what I'm saying? But that's probably my top 5 where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
My life.
I'll probably say as far as my top 5, and my top 5, I would probably say I would definitely say Tupac and Andre 3000, and the remaining 3 spots can revolve any given time.
Oh
You know
yeah.
what I'm saying? Like, yeah, Tupac and Andre 3000 is just it for me. You know what I'm saying? The third spot, the fourth spot, and the fifth spot revolves. It just it's hard to really keep a solid top 5. You know what I'm saying? Like in today's, yeah, it's just hard, man. I think that it's better to ask people what is their top 50, because
Mm,
there's just so many artists that just do so many different things depending on, what I'm saying, like what you are looking for, what you're trying to gauge. I do a lot of times I do like to listen to or think about who are emphasize who are the people who set the trends, right? So
right.
Tupac to me was a trendsetter. When he came out, not too many people was doing exactly what he was doing. And when he was, when he laid that blueprint, almost every artist you could think of in hip hop followed that blueprint. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, even if you mention your Biggie, you know what I'm saying? Because people used to go, who you with, Biggie or Tupac. Like, honestly, without Tupac, Biggie wouldn't have had the blueprint that he had.
Mm.
You
Tell
know,
us about the blueprint.
I mean, just literally talking about telling stories, and catering to emotions, giving that emotional appeal,
Mm,
where sometimes you are the winner, sometimes you are the loser.
mm,
Because prior to that, I don't think hip hop had a lot of people willing to come out to say that they were losers in this or that. You know what I'm saying? Being able to hit on a little bit of politics. Not a lot of artists prior to Tupac was doing it. So he did something he spoke to the politics. He spoke to the socially conscious. And he spoke to he did speak to the ladies too. Like he
yeah.
did something for he spoke to the youth. You know what I'm saying? I remember he did a song for Yummies, that spoke to the black on black crime that was taking place in Chicago, and it was centered around Yummy Sandifer. You know what I'm saying? And yo, Tupac was just that deep. You know what I'm saying? Where like you heard him and he was speaking to you. And so not a lot of artists can do that or have done that prior to Tupac. You may have had artists who were more very political, but not socially conscious. You had artists who were socially conscious, not political. You had artists who did nothing but talked about did music just for the ladies all day, and you had artists who were just just bragging about being as hard as they could be all day. Tupac was a melting pot of all those things, and when he dropped he dropped his various albums, but after Me Against the World, that was a wrap. Every album after Me Against the World had that blueprint. You know what I'm saying? And he made other artists sound better.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, so your Jay-Z's, your Biggies, your Nas, some who may have came before him, like every one of them had to follow that blueprint afterwards. You start seeing a change in the industry, as far as hip hop was concerned after Tupac.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so yeah, man. But look, man, we can do this all night, man. But we went over an hour and 10 minutes, man. Hey, listen, y'all have got to tune in because we got so much more we want to talk about. We didn't even talk about why we call ourselves 13 Tribe. We was having such a great conversation. So
Right.
tune in, man. This is just the first podcast, the first show on the podcast. 13 Tribe Podcast. We're going to keep doing it more and more. Hit the like, the share, the subscribe button. Like, we want to see like more people come on and see what we doing. And, eventually we want to get people to come in and kind of talk with us and, and speak to our community because we like the vibe. This is tribal conflict. God bless. Y'all have a wonderful evening. Y'all hold it down. 13th Amendment, Rifica. Can't wait to see y'all again. 13 Tribe. Holla at your boy. All right. Peace.
All right.